Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I run through the current edition of this Sunday's sermon. I've been preaching through the post-exilic period. Last year I came across an article that really grabbed me. It's by Wilfred M. McClay at the Hedgehog Review, called The Strange Persistence of Guilt. Actually, I found this article because David Brooks linked to it from his own editorial piece entitled by the same thing. And I read through this article, and this could be one of the best articles I'd read all last year. I think in some ways we as a culture have flipped between the don't judge me generation to it's all your fault generation. I should probably change this title. I think we switched from the don't judge me moment to the it's all your fault moment. And one show that I thought best exemplified this was My Name is Earl. That was all about karma. And it was White Lie Christmas, where Joy's mother was lying about dialysis, her gambling addiction, selling her daughter's car, and bankrupting her husband. And all she'd ever say when she got caught was, "Don't judge me, don't judge me." And at the end of the episode, all they did was basically let the kids enjoy their new bikes. That was the don't judge me moment. And that moment is gone, and we have a very different moment now. The world has flipped. Are you white? Slavery is on you, whether or not your ancestors owned or even were in America at the time. Are you a man? Mistreatment against women is on you, no matter what you've done personally. Do you earn more than $30,000 a year? You are a member of the worldwide 1%. Do you use plastic? Do you drive a car? Do you travel by plane? Do you eat meat? If you say yes to any of these things, you are responsible for the problems of the world. And this is what the Hedgehog Review article pointed out. Colonialism, slavery, structural poverty, water pollution, deforestation. There's an endless list of items for which you and I can take the rap. To be found blameless is a pipe dream, for the demands on an active conscience are literally as endless as an active imagination's ability to conjure them. And as those of us who teach young people often have occasion to observe, it may be precisely the most morally perceptive and earnest individuals who have the weakest common sense defenses against such overwhelming assaults on their over-receptive sensibilities. They cannot see a logical place to stop. Indeed, when any of us reflects on the brute fact of being alive and taking up space on this planet, consuming resources that could have met other more worthy needs, we may be led to feel guilty about the very fact of our own existence. This is a very real thing. There's people all over the place carrying around enormous amounts of guilt, others very ready to self-righteously foist them on those people, and there is no redemption for it. Now, we've been going through the post-exilic period, and this is where the Jews come back to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity, and they start rebuilding. And last week we read the prophet Haggai, who was giving them dramatic promises about all of the things that would happen if they would only dig deep and finally finish that temple. Then everything would be set right. Then the world would be set straight. And they're not doing it. It's all their fault. God made these dramatic prophecies both before the exile and to Haggai, and will they come to pass? They didn't seem to be bearing out. The Bible Project is one of my favorite websites because they do these terrific summaries of the books of the Bible. And whereas I want to cover the first 8 chapters of the book of Zechariah, and we don't have time to read through them all, I thought I might play just a piece of this video and give you an overview of what's happening in that book.
The book of the prophet Zechariah. The book is set after the return of the exiles from Babylon to Jerusalem, and we're told in the book of Ezra that Zechariah and Haggai together challenged and motivated the people to rebuild the temple and look for the fulfillment of God's promises. Now, long ago, Jeremiah the prophet had said that Israel's exile would last for 70 years, and that afterwards God would restore his presence to a new temple and bring his kingdom and the rule of the Messiah over all nations. The dates at the beginning of this book tell us that those 70 years are almost up. But life back in the land was hard, and it seemed like none of these promises were going to come true. Why? And the book of Zechariah offers an explanation. It has a fairly clear design. There's an introduction which sets the tone for a large collection of Zechariah's dream visions, and that's concluded by chapters 7 and 8. And then this is followed by two more large collections of poetry and prophecy. Let's just dive in and see how the book works. It begins with Zechariah's challenge to his generation to turn back to God and not be like their ancestors who rebelled and refused to listen to the earlier prophets, which landed them in exile. And so now the returned exiles respond positively to Zechariah. They repent and humble themselves before God, or so it seems. The next large section is a collection of 8 nighttime visions that Zechariah experienced. And just to prepare you, these are full of very bizarre, strange images, a lot like your dreams. The idea that God communicates to people through symbolic dreams, it's very old. It goes back to the book of Genesis. The dreams of Jacob or Joseph or Pharaoh, these gave meaning to current events at the time, but they also gave a window into the future. And so Zechariah has his own dreams now, and they've been arranged in this really cool symmetrical design. The first and the last visions are about 4 horsemen each. They're like rangers patrolling the world on God's behalf, and it's a representation of God's attentive watch over the nations. Their report is that the world is at peace. And in Zechariah's day, this refers to how God raised up Persia to conquer Babylon and bring peace. And so the question now arises, the 70 years of Israel's exile are almost up. Is now the time for the Messianic kingdom in Jerusalem? And God responds by saying that he's determined to fulfill those promises, but he leaves the question of timing unanswered. The second and seventh visions are paired because they're both reflections on Israel's past sin that led up to the exile. So the second vision is about these horns that symbolize the nations that attacked and then scattered Israel, Assyria and Babylon. But then these horns or empires are themselves scattered by a group of blacksmiths, an image for Persia. The seventh dream is about a woman in a basket, and we're told that she's a symbol of the centuries of Israel's covenant rebellion. And then this woman is carried off to Babylon by other women who carry the basket flying with stork wings. This is so strange. The third and sixth visions are paired as they're both about the rebuilding of a new Jerusalem. So a man is measuring the city. It's an image of God's promise that Jerusalem will be rebuilt and become a beacon to the nations who will join God's people in worship. And then the sixth dream is about a scroll that flies around the New Jerusalem, punishing thieves and liars. The idea being that the New Jerusalem is a place that's purified from sin by the scriptures. The fourth and fifth visions are at the center of this collection, and they're about the 2 key leaders among the returned exiles. So Joshua, the high priest, and then Zerubbabel, the royal descendant of David. So Joshua had been symbolically wearing Israel's sin in the form of these dirty clothes. But then those are taken off, and he's given new clothes and a new turban, a symbol of God's grace and forgiveness. And then an angel tells Joshua that if he remains faithful to God, he will lead his people, and Joshua will become a symbol of the future Messianic king. The other vision is about 2 olive trees that supply oil to this elaborate gold lamp, which itself is a symbol of God's watchful eye over his people. And these 2 trees symbolize the 2 anointed leaders, Joshua and then Zerubbabel, who's leading the temple rebuilding efforts. And God says that success will not come to this new temple if it's the result only of political maneuvering. Rather, these 2 leaders must be dependent upon the work of God's Spirit. The visions come to a close with a bonus vision from the prophet, and it picks up the themes of the central 4th and 5th visions. It's Joshua, the high priest again, and he's given a crown and presented as a symbol of the future Messiah, who will also be a priest over God's kingdom. And then Zechariah closes it all out, saying that all of these visions will be fulfilled only if the current generation is faithful to God and obeys the terms of the covenant. And so altogether, these 3 visions emphasize how the coming of the Messianic kingdom is conditional upon this generation being faithful to God, which leads to the conclusion of the dreams. It's another challenge from Zechariah, and a group of Israelites come, and they've been mourning over the former temple's destruction for nearly 70 years. And they ask him, is it time to stop grieving? I mean, is God's kingdom going to come very soon? And Zechariah again reminds them of how their ancestors rejected God's call through the prophets, which led to the exile. And so he challenges them too. He says, this generation will see the Messianic kingdom only if they pursue justice and peace and remain faithful to the covenant. So in other words, Zechariah reverses their question. He asks, are you going to become the kind of people who are ready to receive and participate in God's coming kingdom? And that question is left just hanging there. The people don't answer, and the book just moves on. And so we come to the final section.
And we won't look at that. That will be next week. Now, we've been talking about transactional religion, and there's a reason we like transactional religion. Because if God is dealing square, and because he's God, he should deal square, because if God isn't dealing square, we've got problems way bigger than anything that we can ever imagine. But if God is dealing square, and we keep our end of the bargain, we stay in control of our destiny. And we really like that. That's something that's very pleasing to that. We get what we want, and we secure our own future. Now, the beginning of the story, as summarized by that video, says this. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. The Lord was very angry with your ancestors. Therefore tell the people, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Return to me, declares the Lord Almighty, and I will return to you, says the Lord Almighty. Do not be like your ancestors, to whom the earliest prophets proclaimed, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Turn from your evil ways and your evil practices. But they would not listen or pay attention to me, declares the Lord. Where are your ancestors now? And the prophets, do they live forever? But did not my words and my decrees, which I commanded my servants the prophets, overtake your ancestors? It's an interesting phrase. Then they repented and said, the Lord Almighty has done to us what our ways and practices deserve, just as he determined to do. So they made confession. Now, here's the challenge. Can you keep your own goals? Can you keep all of them? Do you always and only eat what's right? Maybe if you medically have to, but most of us are actually pretty poor at it. Do you never say the wrong thing? Or do you mess up sometimes and say what you shouldn't say? Would your spouse, your children, your coworkers, your friends, your neighbors all say the same thing about you? Should God grade on a curve? What about the collective guilt? That places us right back where this Hedgehog Review is. See, on one hand, we went from don't judge me, where, hey, I'm not to blame, to everyone judging all of us. And sometimes we flip back and forth between these two modes. But what about collective guilt? Is it really that bankrupt? Is there no such thing as collective guilt? I mean, the truth is, we tend to like pushing collective guilt on others and evading it ourselves, when in fact the Bible seems to hold a lot of verses about collective guilt. Why would God ask us to be or to do something we can't? Isn't this the way Jacob received the gift at Bethel? Now, if you remember that story at Bethel, God appears to Jacob in a dream when he's running from Esau. And Jacob did wrong to his brother Esau, and Esau is going to kill him. So Jacob runs away, and he's sleeping, and he puts his head under a rock, and God gives him a dream where God basically reiterates all of the promises that God had given to his grandfather Abram. And he does so, and he emphasizes it with a ladder or a staircase with angels going up and down. Jacob wakes up in the morning and says, surely this is the house of God, so he names the place Bethel. And then he says a surprising thing. He doesn't just say, thank you, Lord, for the astounding promises you've given me. May I truly be grateful and live up to you. He says, Lord, if you come through with this, I'll give you 10% of the take. Now, what kind of a response is this? What does that indicate about his heart? See, I think we all do this. And why do we do that? Why did he do that? The problem goes all the way back to the very beginning of the Bible, in that we don't trust God. In fact, nearly the whole book of Genesis is about us not trusting God. Adam and Eve didn't trust God. Noah had some trust of God, but he wasn't able to really continue to do right. If you look at the episode that happens after the flood, God says to Abraham, I'm going to give you all of the things that you've ever dreamed of, especially a son, and the whole world will be blessed through you. And Abraham basically spends the next 25 years trying to prime the pump. God appears to Jacob, gives him this promise. Jacob continues to try to weasel his way into the promise. And God basically, when confronting him at the river Jabbok, says, no, I'm even going to take away your ability to run away from your brother Esau. You will have no choice but to trust me. We don't trust God that God would be that generous. And that's our dilemma. We have real trust issues and we don't know what to do. And so we wind up doing all sorts of other things to secure our own rescue for ourselves. But these eight stories sort of haunt us because we wonder about fulfillment. Will God make good? He didn't seem to fulfill the promises to the people there. Most of us can lay out promises he hasn't seemed to fulfill to us now. See, here's the thing. The Bible is not a book of rules that if you keep, that if kept, will qualify us for eternal reward. The problem is, because it's not that the Bible doesn't tell us about goodness and righteousness, the Bible just makes clear that we can't keep up our end of the bargain. And this is the story of Jesus, where Jesus does for us what we can't do for ourselves. Now that makes us feel suspicious because we're fairly suspicious people. Right away, people will come back to us and say, but here's the thing. If it's just a gift, you're going to take advantage of it and just say, great, thanks for the gift, and go out and do everything that you did before. Well, God had better be transactional, we imagine, with us, or we will assume his grace and sin anyway. This is the point of Bonhoeffer's cheap grace. The difficulty is that we do it even when God is conditional, because we can't keep our end of the bargain. You see, transactionality actually undercuts true goodness, because if you're only good because it pays, is that really goodness? That's actually the question of the book of Job. If you perform better than your neighbors, you will likely feel superior. You'll likely be self-righteous, and even sinners can't stand self-righteousness. You then rely on your own righteousness, in which, You then rely on your own righteousness, which is weak. Shouldn't you rely on God's righteousness, which is strong? So actually, salvation by grace affords you the chance to be good even when it doesn't pay, which is a better righteousness. And it undercuts your natural inclination to look down on those you imagine aren't as moral as you. You're a lousy judge, and you received a gift. You didn't earn it, so don't feel superior. If you understand the gift, you will live like the giver. If you reject the gift, you won't want communion with the giver. If you imagine you can take the gift without communion with the giver, well, you don't understand the nature of the gift, which leads us actually to communion.